Thank you for joining us today at Miniature Wargaming Labs. Today I have finished up my Cawdor Redemptionists for Necromunda, and we're going to do a little painting tutorial on how I did them. So I'm going to paint these guys all at once, and I'm going to show you the paint, or how I painted one of the simpler models right here. And to do that, primed them Citadel's Abaddon Black, used the following Citadel paints from Games Workshop: Mephiston Red and Khorne Red. Now, use mostly army painter paints, so use Darkstone, Necromancer Cloak, Dirt Splatter, Gunmetal, Weapon Bronze, Matte Black, and Skeleton Bone. And I also use some P3 lines, so Rucksack Tan, Brass Balls, Solid Gold, and Ryan Flesh. And I also use Games Workshop's shades, so Reikland Fleshade, Nuln Oil, and Seraphim Sepia. So we're going to go ahead and get started painting this guy. I primed my Redemptionist black, and now I'm going to put the first coat, one thick coat of Citadel's Mephiston Red. So I have that in my palette. I'm just going to take a messed up dry brush and really work it on there. Not too worried about where the paint goes right now. Now that it's kind of dryish, you can see for this model we only need to do the robes. That's pretty much the bottom 3/4. Now I'm going to take some Khorne Red. It is a darker red, so yes, I put a lighter red and a darker red over that. And this just gets a lot more of the magenta tones of the Khorne to pop up while still using a black primer. And I do that because it gives it more of that look of like a prince of the church, a cardinal. There we go, now I'll let that dry. Now we're going to take some Army Painter Darkstone and have that in my palette already. And we're going to do his tabard here. Just kind of the black, really dark brown. Next up will be some Army Painter Necromancer Cloak, and that is going to be for the gloves, belt. So trying to treat it as like a different type of leather. Now don't get the belt straps there, we're going to leave those red. Now we're going to use P3's Rucksack Tan, and I need my tiny brush for this one, because this is just going to be like the light brown we're going to use for the little noose that he carries. And gently just glide the brush tip down the ropey parts. Now I'm going to take some Army Painter Dirt Splatter, and this is going to be for the cover of his book. Now it's running really thin. You get that with Army Painter paints, but they're cheap. Alright, let's mix that up a little bit better. Well, that took a minute to get that brown straightened out, but I got it on. We're going to let that dry for a little while. So next, I have a pointy brush that I've beat to heck. I basically use it as a precision dry brush. So you can see it used to be this kind of brush. Now it's been cut down and hacked down to this kind of brush. So what I do with that is I'm going to take some Army Painter gunmetal, and as my chair squeaks, I'm going to dip it in some Army Painter gunmetal paint. I'm going to wipe most of the paint off, and I'm going to just kind of do the little dry brush here. Also want to get the edge of these black paint. Shoulder pads. Okay, so I've got the gun brushed up like I want. So now I want to take the actual gunmetal, and I make all my hand grenades old school. Just gunmetal, make that. I'll make tip. Make the little bands. There, see he has some more hand grenades back here. Get those. We also have the belt buckle. Just want to use a tiny brush right there. Probably do the clasp on the book gold, but then I got his little helmet cage. That'll probably be about it on these. Oh, that's right. He has this little arm, the stock. I'll make that metal. I'll make the connecting support bar for his flamer. I'll make that metal. Alright, let's go fill this in. Make this. Boop. Now we're going to move on to the Army Painter Weapon Bronze. Again, back to my tiny brush. We don't need much of this, but this will be for the flamer components. So for the fuel tank right there, and the flamer attachment nozzle right there. Stop bumping the camera. So, quick work of this one. Alright, now we're going to use some matte black. You see I put some of the gold here and in the book. Now I should say, since this is going to be one of my newer Redemptionists, I use the Weapon Bronze. On the older ones I use Army Painter True Copper, give it a more tarnished look. But this is to make it look like his gear is new. But for the black, we're going to go on the boots. This way the boots will have some distinction from the gloves and belt. Nothing that anyone will notice, but just for fun. Alright, and then for the hose line. There we go. Now we're going to be ready for washing, but I got to go hairdryer this, then we can put the wash on. Now for our Nuln Oil. And so I'm going to apply this wash on here. So I'm going to get a dry brush that I've destroyed over time. I'm going to start and just put one thick coat on this guy. And then we're going to have to let him dry for quite some time. So I normally do this at night before I go to bed, or get up in the morning, do this before I go to work. That way when I come back, this is all dry. And I do all my guys at once. As the birds chirp. Now that that's all dried up, I'm going to take some P3 Rucksack Tan. And I actually have a special brush for this. So this was originally a Citadel layer brush. I'm just going to dip a little bit of paint on there. I'm going to wipe most of it off. Then I'm going to just use the side of it, kind of put a little too much on. Kind of like dry brush. This is why you don't want a lot of the paint on it, because I just want to hint that it's leather there. You also get some of the rope again, that to pop out a little bit. Now next up I want to do these sections here. So we did weapon bronze here and here. But we're going to highlight them with two different paints. So I'm going to use P3's Brass Balls and P3's Solid Gold. So let's start off with the Brass Ball. So we both use Weapon Bronze, but I want to create a little difference, a little variety in here. I'm just going to grab a tiny brush, my layer, tiny brush, come on, okay. And I'll just hit some of these raised edges. This will get more of that bronze brass look going. And just a little couple of swipes around here. Kind of punch up the little canisters. Alright. Now we'll put away this. These are more steps than I normally use in my other models, but I like my Necromunda ones a lot. So, now with the solid gold, what we're going to do is we have a couple with the little latch on his book. It's good because you don't want the thing shooting fire to look like it's the same metal as armor, so we're just going to put a couple of streaks here. There we go. Alright, next up we'll take some Army Painter Filthy Cape. I'll use that same brush. It's basically my point dry brush. And we'll get it all ready. This is for the gloves, so the same thing we did here. But remember we did this Darkstone and this Necromancer Cloak. This highlight we kind of brushed on the brown over it and the gray. So that will make it look like it's two different leather materials. can kind of hit his belt here too. Now we're going to go back to Army Painter Gunmetal and our pointy brush. I'm just going to tap some of these things we already did gunmetal before. Also gives it a good chance to clean them up a little bit. Just create little lines here. If you wipe off enough paint, we can kind of like show off some of the middle edging there. And don't forget some of the weapon here. I'm going to go around, you know, shine it up to taste. Since we're on track to highlight things, how about we go ahead and grab some Mephiston Red. And we'll grab that brush we're using for dry brushing. Since it serves as a layer brush, it's over. I'm going to wipe most of the red off. I'm going to do this to the Khorne Red. You can punch it up as much as you like. So this is kind of using it as a dry brush. You know, the more layers you put on, the brighter red it'll get. So this really affects how red do you want this. So I like working with red. I'm good at it. I'm just worried that, you know, all of them will start looking alike after a while. Now we're going to do some detail pieces here. So I'm going to take some Army Painter Skeleton Bone and my small brush. I'm just going to paint the pages in the book here. Now I should have mentioned I painted the exposed parts of skin here with the skeleton bone, and that was just to get it off the black so that I could take some P3 Ryan Flesh and make a better base for this lighter flesh tone to stick to. So we go ahead and we'll put that over skeleton bone, not the pages, just the fleshy bits. You can decide if you want to take on the eye sockets in the mask or not. I might just put a hint of color in there. Now, waited long enough for the flesh tone to dry, the skeleton bone to dry, so we're going to take some Reikland Fleshade. And I'm going to take a layer brush, wet it a little bit, and then as my dog scratches at her bed, put a layer of the wash down. For this one nice thick coat. The skeleton bone and the Reikland do great on paper. I try to find the right consistency of how much flesh wash I'll put on. Jam it into the eye sockets there. Alright, I'm going to let that dry. You know, while we do that, let's work on the hair. So I'm going to take some dry rust. Until we're getting close to the end of the day here. start using washes. Alright, where's my little layer brush? There it is. So, we got the Army Painter Dry Rust. And we're just going to take the side of our brush, which is wet, and just hit some of these highlights here. Did a little too much. Flick it off with the side of my hand. Let me push it around. See now, remember on this part I used the Khorne Red, washed it Nuln Oil, put some Mephiston Red on there, and this orange I thinned down with some water so it'll run crevices and lighten up. The idea is kind of act like contrast paint or a glaze and just run around and give it a very natural look. Alright, now on the drier bit, rust there. And just take some of these highlights and punch it up, put another coat of paint. There. They seem to like to make their hair look like they're on fire. So when I paint these models, and some of them do have fire, I use yellow on top. Okay. Now that that's done, I actually have a mixture of 1 part black, 2 parts gunmetal. I do all my Necromunda bases in. So you gotta do long drying times anyway. I hope I'm not out of this stuff. I hate mixing it up. Alright, let me unclog you. There we go. You are now unclogged. Alright. Down to the base. You know, it just darkens down the gunmetal. I wanted a really dark gunmetal, so I just had my proprietary mix of 1 part black, 2 parts gunmetal. I'm going to just go ahead and paint this up. Alright, see, I have my little figure there. I painted the base, and you'll notice he's not on his paint handle, because we are going to go back to the Army Painter Rust Orange, and put it in here, and we watered it down to a very thin glaze. Then I'm going to take a brush I've messed up in the past, wet it, so you can see I always have uses for brushes I've destroyed from my horrible painting technique. It's not bad, it's just hard on brushes, which I don't care. It does what I want and I'll get more. So you see how it wets down. I like a heavy corroded look. And so it's nighttime, I'm about to head off to bed. So I'm going to go do up all my Redemptionist guys with their rusty bases. And then when I wake up in the morning, they'll be dried and we'll finish this guy up. Now we see the orange has dried. And it's not back on its handle yet because I'm going to use some Seraphim Sepia. Just thinking about this now. Let's move my paint palette lid over to the side here. So what we're going to do is, this is actually a new bottle. And I got it for free. It's the old mixture. Just because it popped like that. Alright. So we're going to wet our sloppy brush here. And just fill it with Seraphim Sepia. do that. It's normally so soaked, that's why I have this right here, so it peels off easily. I'm going to wet it down a little bit and figure just a little hint of it around the hair. See, Seraphim Sepia has more of a yellow, so that should contrast with the orange. I like that. Alright, now we're going to let that dry. And that'll be it. So, well, thank you for joining us at Miniature Wargaming Labs, and we'll see you next time.